Today's call on perfectionism and how to deal with it. It's something that has been very pervasive for me. I know that a lot of people are dealing with this, especially a lot of high achievers, like I like to call them, people that desire a specific level of outcome, people that have very high standards for the work that they do. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a high achiever. Let's start there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a high achiever. It is great to have high achievers in this world. The problem for a lot of high achievers is, though, that they have a ton of personal issues that they deal with, including sense of self-worth, including never feeling like what they do is good enough, including not being able to fill their own cups, including constantly sacrificing themselves and their well-being. And when that happens, a lot of people end up burning out. They end up having a lot of struggles. They end up just not enjoying life. And therefore, I have made it my personal mission to help people, high achievers especially, feel much better so that they can continue to create impact without it coming with such a heavy cost to their well-being. And that's really what we're going to be doing today, speaking on perfectionism, because perfectionism, it's really interesting. If you start by looking at what is perfectionism, perfectionism is the desire for the output that you're creating to be perfect. And the interesting thing is that we all have different ideas about what does perfect mean. We don't all see perfect as being the same thing. So what is perfect to me might be very different than what is perfect to you. And that really comes down to what is our individual taste, what is our experience, what do we like things to look like. And we can often lose the bigger picture when we're focused on what looks perfect to us, especially if we're working with someone who's also a perfectionist but has a different view on what does perfect actually mean or look like. And I'm being taken back to my bachelor's, when I was not even the bachelor's, but the first year of my bachelor's studies. And we were doing a group project, and we had a thesis of some sort. It was like 100 pages, and we were 5 people that each of us had really strong opinions about what things were supposed to be and what perfect looked like. And we were all really opinionated, and we just had different views on what was important. And we ended up at some point sitting until 4 o'clock in the morning discussing where the comma was supposed to go. And instead of looking at the bigger picture, instead of looking at the points that we're trying to make, are they coming across? Is it easy for the reader to understand what we mean? Are there faults in our arguments? We ended up just sitting there and arguing about commas. And it was, looking at it now, we spent the whole night up until the deadline. We handed it in a few hours before the deadline. And we've had many of these nights where we were just arguing over these tiny things. And we did all right. I think we got like the higher end grade, not the highest, but we did all right. The problem was just that we were focused on so many of the wrong things, and we were putting a lot of time into the wrong things because it had to be quote unquote perfect. And in trying to make it perfect, we actually ended up creating something that could have been better if we had focused on the right things. And it just comes back to a conversation that I love having around what is considered valuable to the people that you're serving. And this really became an important topic for me when I was recently employed in my first full-time job after finishing my master's. I had the idea that the more time I spent on something, the more I sacrificed for something, the more valuable I would be considered, because I was the person who was there until late, who showed up early, who had lunch in front of my laptop, who did all of this work all the time. And I ended up realizing that I was not actually spending my time and energy on the things that are considered valuable. And therefore, I was not appreciated as much as people who spent less time but did more important work. Their work was in something that was just really valuable and important. And I think when it comes to perfectionism, we will very often end up spending a lot of time and energy on things that aren't necessarily important in order for it to look or to come across in a particular type of way. And we very often do it from the perspective of what is my idea of perfect instead of what is the receiver's idea of high quality. And I've spoken about it before, the difference between excellence and perfectionism, where perfectionism for me is very, very limited and it's very, very subjective. And we really restrict ourselves in scarcity, in like this, we put ourselves in a tiny box when things have to be perfect because there's not a lot of room to be creative and to try things out and to experiment. And when we don't have room to move outside of this tiny box that we've created for ourselves, we stay stuck in old ways. We make it really hard for us to learn new things and to expand. It literally, if you imagine it as a picture and you have this tiny box that you're in and you can only fit within this box and it has to be perfectly aligned with the corners and the sides, and you can only ever live inside this box and there's no room to move outside of it, it literally limits expansion, right? It's almost like it feels almost hard to breathe. And the reason I'm using that language is to really to understand the energetics behind perfectionism, because I feel like a lot of people just also feel very restricted by their perfectionism. It makes it really hard for them to put something out into the world because it has to be perfect first. But nothing is ever perfect. Perfection does not exist. Perfection is the absence of flaws, of mistakes, of failure, right? It's the absence of something that doesn't fit into the box. Whereas excellence is very expansive. It's abundance, right? You can constantly improve. You can put something out there. You can do the best that you're able to do with the skills that you have and the experience that you have. And you put it out there. And then as you do it, you gain more experience and then you iterate and then you improve and you get feedback and you iterate. And it's like a process of constantly raising the bar for what you're able to create. And it's really similar. If you look at a skill, let's say that you had a creative skill as a child. Let's say you knew how to draw, play an instrument. And when you start out as a kid, you don't have this expectation that you need to be like Mozart or, any of these Renaissance painters who were just really detailed. Nobody expects even your drawing to look realistic, right? It might be a stick figure, but you start somewhere and then you continue and you continue and you grow, get more skills, and you try things out and you learn new techniques and you expand on your skill. And as you do that, as you expand, excellence is increased and increased and increased. And that's how we end up having these people who just are absolutely incredible at their crafts. They're excellent at playing their instrument, or they just know how to draw really well, or they make beautiful art. People don't start out like that. And if you're a child and then you look at a professional who's drawing something beautiful and very realistic, and you're thinking, I need to be able to draw that in order to be good enough to draw within my skill set, then that person, that child, will never grow into being really good at what they do. And I think this is something that I struggled with a lot as a kid because I wanted to be good immediately. And I tried so many things out and then I gave up, and then I tried something new and gave up, and I tried something new and I didn't like it. And there's many reasons I didn't like it. Okay, I didn't deal well with other kids. I didn't like having other people around me so much. There's many reasons for why I didn't like it. But the thing is, I never stuck with something for long enough to get really good at it. And I think the thing that I dealt with the best was playing the piano, because I just kept going, because I kind of enjoyed it. And still, I didn't like my teacher, and then I ended up stopping, which is unfortunate. But there is this idea that in order to be good enough, it has to be perfect. And I think what happens is that when we're stuck in perfectionism, we're constantly measuring ourselves against a stick that's just not made for us. We're looking at other people and it becomes a comparison game. And then we feel bad about what we want to put into the world or what we want to create because it's not as good as somebody else. Right? Imagine if you're a performer and you're like, but I'm not as good as Beyonce. Well, she also has a whole different different skill set, different resources, different access to lighting and backup dancers and choreographers and people who are just extremely skilled that can help her with her sets. And if you're just starting out and you're like, but I'm not like Beyonce, okay, but then you'll never be either, right? And there's just this thing about perfectionism is that it's incredibly limiting. There's no space. And I think sometimes it's just things like deep breathing and paradigm shift can help us. I'm noticing that my shoulders are coming up to my ears when I'm talking about perfectionism, because I've really been at it myself for such a long time, and I still catch myself sometimes thinking, well, I shouldn't be putting things out into the world because my lighting is not good enough. I don't have a good enough camera lens. I don't have my internet access is giving me issues, or it's raining outside. There's so many reasons for why I shouldn't do something because the quality is not going to be what I would want it to be. I want a professional editor to do it. But the thing is, if I'm constantly waiting to get all of these things aligned, I'm never going to produce. I'm never going to create. And there's just also something around the decision to say, I'm going to do the best that I can with the resources that I have available at this moment. And then along the way, I'm going to keep elevating my craft. And if I look back now at the resources I had available when I started, and the communication skills I had when I started, and the messages that I had to share when I started, and everything was made from an old phone, and not really knowing how to do things, right? Not really having that experience. If I compare those two now, years ago versus now, it's going to be looking very, very different. But I would have never reached to the point where I'm now if I hadn't started back then. And I think it's just so important that we feel like there's something that's worth to do. If we feel like there's something that we should be doing, something that is important, right? We feel like there's an importance to the thing that we want to put out into the world. I think it's really important that we do it. We have to follow that calling to say that there's something bigger than me that I need to step into. But every single time you step into your perfectionist, you hold yourself back. And that doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit you because you don't get the skills development because it only ever really comes with practice. And it doesn't benefit the people who could really use the message that you have or the craft that you have or whatever it is that you want to put out into the world. It could even be writing, like writing your first draft of something. And therefore, for me, perfectionism is such a big blocker for people living their purpose, for people growing, for people expanding. And that's the reason that I feel like it's just really, really important that we do something about it. And I mean, there's so many layers to everything. Perfectionism is never just one thing, right? It's never only one thing. But what I would say about it is that it is constricting. I feel like it can always be constricting. And it never is only created from only one thing. Perfectionism, like anything else, there's a lot of ties to it. There's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of unpacking to do. For me, perfectionism also is very tightly connected to control. And control is something that is really hard to give up on. Control for me is linked to safety. That's one of the things that I mentioned. If you watched my latest TEDx, you'll hear that I talk about how I was clinging onto this illusion of control. I was clinging onto the idea that I can control things. And it was just really important for me to do that. And if I felt like control slipped away, I would panic. I would get extremely uncomfortable. I would feel, when the loss of control, I had a physiological reaction to it. And when you lose that sense of control and you start to panic, it becomes really, really hard to do anything that's in the direction that you want to go. But what it also is, and what I also mentioned in the latest TEDx that I did, is that we learn to navigate life based on what makes us feel safe. And for a lot of people, control makes us feel safe because when you can control everything, then there's no harm. And it really comes from, for a lot of people, it comes from just growing up in conditions where if you weren't there to control things, it would escalate and it would be harmful. And so giving up of control can feel like exposing ourselves to harm. And if we feel like we're exposing ourselves to harm, then the emotional need that we have to cling on to the control becomes just so much stronger. And then when we don't have that, the panic kicks in. And then your nervous system starts going in all directions. You start just feeling that almost like an emotional breakdown, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up in relation to perfectionism is perfectionism and control almost seem like the same frequency. It feels like it has to be perfect according to my standards, and I need to have my hands into all of it. And it's similar also to, even to like micromanagement, needing to make sure that everything is done exactly the way that I need it and I want it. And if it's not going to be good enough. And if there's flaws and if there's errors, then it can reflect negatively on me, and I need this to be perfect. And that's why you will see that a lot of micromanaging leaders are often perfectionists. And you might think, oh, but there's the stuff that they create is never perfect. Nothing ever is perfect, because nothing is ever without flaws or mistakes or failures, like we spoke about before. Which remind me, I didn't finish that part. Perfection is the absence of flaws, whereas excellence is the attitude towards them. So when we do experience flaws, when we find flaws and mistakes, how do we deal with it? That for me is excellent. So how do we handle it when they're there instead of having the assumption that there need to be none? Because that's also when panic sets in. If you expect something to be perfect and all of a sudden you hand something in or you hand it over, you create something, there's a flaw. A lot of perfectionists will panic again, similar to the issue that we're talking about with control. And when you have the sense of panic around something, again, it's contracting. I don't know if you can sense, I don't really even know how to explain that better, but there's almost like a need to shelter ourselves. There's not a lot of expansion associated with feelings of perfectionism, control, and panic. Whereas if you can let go and you can allow something to be imperfect, you can allow yourself to grow. You can allow yourself to learn from the mistake. It's even similar, it's on the same field as can you receive criticism. If you always need things to be perfect and your identity is tied to things being perfect, but now someone comes and tells you that thing you were doing was not perfect, now it feels like a personal attack on your perfectionism. Now it feels like your flaw has been exposed to the world. Now it feels like someone is telling you that you're not who you want to be. That's very painful, again, very contracting. Whereas if you feel like you can receive the feedback, you can be told that here's a flaw, and you can look at it and say, actually, I think you're right. I want to improve on this. Thank you for letting me know. Because that was a blind spot for me. I did not see that. That is expansive, right? Because now you can grow. But if you cannot take feedback, you will never be able to move outside your box, because your box will never change its size or shape, form. So when it comes to perfectionism, it's really about, first of all, seeing it for what it is, which is defense mechanism, right? Perfectionism is if something is perfect, people can't criticize you. If something is perfect, you won't be showing any flaws to the world, because it's almost as if what we're creating and what we're putting into the world is a reflection on us. And if what we're putting into the world is not perfect, then we're going to show to the world that we're not perfect. And then all of a sudden now we're open to criticism. It's terrifying, right? It's terrifying being told that you're not good enough. Especially if you grow up in an environment where constantly being better than other people was your identity. Being good enough meant that you had to be better than everyone else, right? I think as a high achiever, a lot of you will probably relate to that. You had to always be, not even in the top 3, but in the top 1. Like if you came home and you were 3rd in the class of 100 people, and you would have some person that you admired saying, oh, Who are the two people that did better than you? Right? If you can relate to that, or even not even, it doesn't even have to be another person. You might have had that yourself. Like, I was so close to being good enough, but good enough could only ever mean the top one. And which is really harmful, because that means that you have 99 people that need to be worse than you in order to be good enough. And that, again, it's just very scarcity, right? Scarcity, always constantly looking at what is not good enough instead of looking at, look at all of these amazing things that we created. Look at what we achieved. Look at what we did. Look at the impact that it had. Look at what I made. Look at what I did. You know, look at who I've become on the journey. Perfectionism is always being focused on that tiny little thing that wasn't good enough. And it's such a scarcity mindset to have. And I think once you see it for what it is, once you see that perfectionism is really restricting you from moving out into the world and expanding on your skills and developing yourself, it is keeping you, I don't know how many pieces of art and creativity and just beautiful things, ideas, right? So much that has never been released into the world because the creator thought, oh, it's not good enough. The books that haven't been written, the movies that haven't been created, the people that never really stepped fully into their purpose, all because not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And perfectionism really is that. It is the focus on what is not good enough instead of focusing on, look at how amazing all of this is. Whereas with excellence, I'm promoting, I hope this doesn't come across as me saying, oh, we should all just kind of be mediocre. That's not what I mean. We can still be excellent, right? We can still do incredible things, but excellence is looking at, is this really good? Is this something I could be proud of? Not because there's like a tiny flaw somewhere that nobody will ever notice, a comma that's put in the wrong place, nobody will see it, right? But is this something that's beautiful and impactful? And you look at everything that it is instead of everything that it isn't. And when you look at everything that it is, and you're looking at, can I elevate this in other ways? And you try out things, and you experiment, and you play with it, and you get creative, and you get frustrated, and then you get creative again. You get new ideas, and you try things out, and you're looking at everything that is and everything that could be, and then you put it out into the world. And then you just, every single time you do it, you just do it a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, because you have new skills, you have new knowledge, you have new experience. You know, a lot of the things that required a lot of heavy lifting in the beginning becomes more fluent because now you have the experience. Now you can work on the little details. You can start noticing the little things, and you create something that's more and more beautiful. Just like you start with a stick drawing, and after years of practicing and drawing, you have these beautiful, beautiful pieces of art. In that way, excellence is expansive. It's elevating. It is service, right? It is the combination of actually doing something because we're not holding ourselves back through the excuse of perfectionism, which it is, right? Perfectionism is an excuse for not releasing something. Perfectionism is an insecurity, which is causing you not to share your heart with the world, with your talent with the world. It is an insecurity around being criticized. It is the fear of not having control of how it will be received. Perfectionism is just, it's a lower vibration, right? Whereas excellence is the continuous expansion, continuous development, continuous growth. And if we can start saying, I want things to be perfect, and then switch it to, I want things to be excellent. Can you just feel the difference in those two? I need things to be perfect versus I desire it to be excellent. There's so much more room to work on here. There's so much more. There's a decision at some point saying, okay, we're ready. We're ready to let this go. We're ready to show it to the world. And now comes all of the other layers that we have to deal with. If we put something into the world that's not well received, or it's not received at all because nobody's looking, nobody's seeing it, right? Which is also a different type of pain. It can be now we have a lot of eyes on it, and you get a lot of people who are negative and who just have a lot of bad things to say. Now comes all of the new layers of, I should have never done this, or just I'm again not feeling good enough, and feeling defensive, and feeling like other people's opinions sway who you feel you are. All of that comes with difficulty. But if we can start by overcoming the obstacle that is ourselves and then putting our genius into the world, that is the first step. Now we can take all of the other steps later on. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it kind of clarified a little bit why, first of all, why are we using perfectionism? What is it really? How is it hindering us from moving forward? And why should we make that shift from excellence to, from perfection to excellence? And apart from that, I want to say that next month in January, I'll be kicking off a masterclass on creating a new approach to goal setting. Because in January, a lot of us, we want to set goals for the year, and a lot of us will set the same goal that we set last year. It didn't happen. We want to do all of these different things when we're looking forward to a year to come. And a lot of it actually ties to, I want the year to be perfect, and how do I deal with that? And there's so many things that are outside of our control, so we cannot guarantee that the year is going to be perfect, because so many things is going to happen. There's going to be so many things happening next year that you have no control over, that you have no influence on, and it's going to impact your journey whether you want it or not. How do we deal with that? How do we create goal setting in a way that feels aligned with more who I want to be rather than what I want to do? Because what I want to do becomes a natural result of who you are. So I always talk about, let's start with working on who we are, and then how can we now set goals and targets and ideas around what we want to do in 2026 when we change that focus. So I'm going to be doing that in January. Keep an eye out. We will see more about it. I think it's going to be 3 steps, probably a three-step masterclass, 3 separate videos, Q&A if you want, if you have questions. And if you have questions for this video on perfectionism, just put it in the comments below. And yeah, this was fun. I look forward to seeing you all later. Bye.